thanks everyone for coming along. We're very grateful to Professor Carl Heneghan for giving a talk again at our open event this year. He is Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine here at Oxford University, and he's the director of our increasingly extensive postgraduate program in evidence-based healthcare. And today he's talking to you about the public understanding of that. So if you'll welcome him onto the stage.
What Doug forgot to say though is I'm also a GP.
I knew that.
And at 6 o'clock I'll be working in the urgent care centre out of hours. So you all have to remain well. What I do in my job is really quite a straightforward thing, is try and use evidence to inform decision making about healthcare plans. Okay? Which you would think is straightforward, but actually is very complicated because of the amount of evidence that exists. In a year, there's about 1.2 million research articles indexed on PubMed, which is a sort of database that we use for putting the peer-reviewed literature. About 40,000 randomized controlled trials. And so you can see it's quite difficult to know which is good evidence, which is bad evidence, and how might you use that. So the basis of this talk is to think a little bit about how you use evidence to inform decisions, and I'm particularly talking about treatment decisions. So we're obviously all interested in healthcare, and there are some amazing papers out there which you all buy on a daily basis, like the Daily Mail. Sunbeds lethal as cigarettes. Is that true? Social websites harm a child's brains. 82% more chance of dying in surgery at the weekend. Well, all of them are informed by evidence, and some of them maybe a bit over the top. Ways of thinking. Should you drink? Don't drink more than 3 glasses of wine a day. And look, it's obviously an Oxford study claim. So, when we and the thing is, when you think about this, is the reason this stuff gets there is because you all get on the web, don't you? Yeah. You irresistibly click on this stuff without knowing, and then what happens is you publish more of it because you click on it, and the more you click on it, the more it appears, and here's some more. And here's my other favourite paper, is the Daily Express. Daily Express is superb for headlines and healthcare, and I have this sort of obsession with the Daily Express in that I particularly collect dementia headlines, and what happened is it started to become a sort of bit of an obsession of mine, is new ways to fight dementia, red wine pill stops dementia. So, that's a lot of headlines, but then they kept coming. So you obviously click on this stuff, and the editor at the Daily Express knows this, because what happened is his wife went on a statin. And basically she said, I've got these leg pains on the statin. So he published an article about the Daily Express which says statins cause leg pains. I forgot to tell you it was based on his wife. But what happens is the readership goes up. That's what happens. And it goes, and look, even more on dementia. Okay? So at this point I was getting a bit confused. What do I do? So I'm going to try and start to organise them in some way into themes. So I started to move them about a bit and put them over here. So some here like chocolate can cause dementia, some medications. These are sort of lifestyle factors. These are tests. Diet down here, spicy diet. Anybody eat curries? I love curries. That's why it's because it beats dementia, according to the Daily Express. And then I found more, and I got them all into these ways of thinking. And I ended up with, there are about 8 cures or things for. If you lose weight, that's good. But apparently, if you eat chocolate, that's good. So anybody who knows how to lose weight and eat lots of chocolate, really interesting. Keeping busy. Anybody here keep busy? See, that's why I'm working tonight. I'm keeping busy. Healthy living, puzzles, apparently. Diet, you've got to go back to your diet, lose weight, diet and eat chocolate, some drugs to it, and there are obviously some tests out there. Okay. And that was that. And honestly, this keeps going. And this is what it looks like as of today. But the thing is, everything will be okay, all right? Because within 10 years, we're all sorted. So you only have to last another 10 years without getting dementia, and you'll be fine. Okay, not only that, it does the same for cancer. You can get new hopes for cure for cancer. So this stuff, you are obviously looking at this stuff all the time. And you're obsessed with it. Okay? We're obsessed with healthcare. Anything that can make us feel healthier, psychologically well-being, obviously we're on it like it. And we are, because a significant amount of searches are for healthcare on the internet. Okay. So, how can you have an approach? So let's give you a very simple issue here. Going back to 2009, these are my girls 10 years ago. I can tell you they're much bigger now. And as you can see, I am a real person. And should I give Tamiflu to children if they have a fever? Going back to, remember the swine flu? Yeah? Well, that was everywhere. And it's interesting with the news and all that. We are also becoming very hysterical. Now, I wonder who's causing it, us or the media? So, remember we were on alert for a new super flu. Yeah? Is swine flu already here? Now the battle commences to contain it. Feels a bit like Brexit, really, doesn't it? It could be. Will kill 350 people every day. Some of you should be dead by now, according to these numbers, to these figures, because that's the information we put out there. Panic then swept Britain. We were all in a state of panic. And then basically, you couldn't go on holiday. And then based after that, you were all going to die. By now you're either thinking, is there a simple headline out there that makes sense? Okay? It's interesting, isn't it? So no wonder we're in a state of panic, aren't we? And so how do you believe it? So one of the things we do is we do what's called systematic reviews. So I'm going to teach you about what a systematic review is, how you might look at it, and how you might go searching for one next time you have a particular issue. You say, oh, for instance, I'm really interested in whether multivitamins help me. You're going to have an approach to find out about multivitamins. So we did the systematic review. That's what I do. Okay, that's what we do in our research. And when we did the systematic review, we basically said, when we looked at it in children, we basically said, the evidence suggests, don't give it to children, because it doesn't work. And actually the harms outweigh the benefits. And when we looked at it in adults, and we looked at the £450 million we'd spent stockpiling it, it doesn't work in adults either. Okay. So, how can we have an approach where it's not my opinion, it's the evidence that I use to be able to influence policy or public decision making? So I don't come and tell you not to take Tamiflu. My job is to say, here's the evidence of the benefits and the harms. Based on that, here's what I consider, but it's an informed decision. So these are the steps that we get to. And the reason it drops off, so you ask a clinical question, you acquire some evidence, you look at the effect, because if it doesn't make a difference, why bother? Yeah? And then appraise the quality of the evidence and apply it. Now you can see it's getting smaller and smaller. Because actually, remember I said to you, there's all this research out here. By the time you get down here and they do a little filtering system, you actually only have a little bit that you apply. Some of it doesn't make a difference. Even when it does make a difference, the quality of it is a problem. And even at the end of the day, it might not be superior to a pre-existing treatment. So there's a drop-off. But this is the bit that's the most important, this step. Okay? And at this step, you want to go for what's the highest level of evidence to answer this question. And it's an interesting phenomenon that when you think about a clinical question, there is some evidence that you go, this is the type of evidence I want to use, and not down here. And we call this the evidence pyramid. At the bottom here is expert opinion. And boy, are we all good at being experts. Yes, you know, and I can be. My wife has to nudge me like that and say, "Shut up," when we're at a party or something like that. Because when people say things, I'm about to go, "And where's your evidence?" And that can be a conversation killer. Okay. So next time you're at your party or you're out, watch and just hear people saying things. Oh, we should be doing this and you should be doing that. And you think, we're down here. But actually, where you want to be in the pyramid is up here. And right at the top is a systematic review. Okay, so it's a pyramid because they're all left. There's more of this, because we all have this, and there's less of this. Okay? And this is because of this, we use what's called, this is a document called Levels of Evidence. And here, if I'm looking here, just at this, I mean, do it the old-fashioned way. Does the intervention help? The highest level of evidence here is systematic review. Down here is what we call mechanistic-based reasoning, which is, this is how the drug works in effect. So if you take aspirin, here's how it works. It's an antiplatelet. It works in this way. But that doesn't explain its effect in humans. Okay? So right at the top of the tree, if you take one thing home, and I'm going to reinforce this again, is you are looking for a systematic review. Okay? Does this intervention help? The first thing I'm doing is I need a systematic review. And if I have a randomized controlled trial, that's great. But the next thing I do is I go, I wonder if this randomized trial is part of a systematic review. Okay. Now, what is a systematic review? So, a systematic review systematically identifies, appraises and synthesizes evidence from studies addressing the same research question. Okay. Now, that's a bit of a mouthful for me. Try and remember. So, here's your acronym for the day is QFES. Question, Q, finds all the relevant studies, appraises the quality, and summarises the evidence using explicit methods. And all of them pieces have to be there. So if this is missing, it's not systematic review. If it doesn't try and find the relevant evidence, then it's just a literature review. Somebody's just picked the evidence they like. And people do that all the time. They just cherry pick the evidence that supports their claims. Okay? Now the basis of getting all the evidence is you're trying to get the positive and the negative ones and summarise them all together. You can't suddenly say, well, we'll throw that one out. We don't quite like that study. Okay? So, here's an example. We are approached by the BBC. And the BBC asked us, are the results of research commissioned by BBC Panorama and conducted by Oxford University Centre for Evidence Medicine, what do they say? World experts assessing medical studies. How's that? That's not bad. I'm a world expert. You now are about to become world experts. Alright? Well, it is pretty straightforward if you're systematic in what you do. How does it feel to be a world expert? Very good, isn't it? Okay, so what did we do? What do you think we did? Looked at all the research studies. Which particular research studies did we look for? For the IVF add-on treatment, which type of studies do you think you look for? Okay, so you're going to look for randomized controlled trials? That's not bad. You're going to look for randomized controlled trials. What do you think we did?
Read the Express.
No? The Express put our stuff in. What did we look for?
Were there any studies?
Okay, were there any studies? It's going to take me a long time if I look for all the studies. Relevant, what type of study am I going to look for? Correct, you're now a world expert. You can bleed right now. Okay, that's the one thing. I like to keep my life simple. Why would I want to go and find all the studies? That'll take me forever. Actually. But what we did, so actually, here's a look at the paper. Here's what we did. We searched Medline and Cochrane Library for systematic reviews. Now, interestingly, when there were no systematic reviews, we go down a level to look for the randomised trials. We don't go the other way because there are too many randomised trials. Somebody's already done the work for us. Yeah? When we could not find any randomised trials, we looked for the next highest level of available evidence. I showed you, so we go down a level. Okay? So we might go down to an observational study. But if we hit the highest level, we stop. Okay? And we categorise them according to the levels of evidence. And only then do we then look for the outcome of interest. Yeah? Remember when I showed you, look for the highest level of best available evidence, assess the effect? Yeah. And then what happens is, people like the NHS, they look at our research, they do a great job, and they say, what did we do? A systematic review of the evidence has been carried out for just under 3/4 of the procedure. So we managed to find 27 systematic reviews for 38 of the add-ons. Okay? But the next bit is the simple bit. Only 5 of the 38 interventions improve life birth outcomes. So basically, you go to an IVF clinic, there are 38 different interventions you can be sold, and already we said 33 of them are a waste of time. Okay? So why are they being offered at cost to individuals? That's a bit old, isn't it? Why would you want to do that? Unless some of them are about £6,000. I might do it for 6,000. But 5 of them. Okay, now, we then assess the quality. Now, if I go on to the next 5 of the ones that improve live birth outcomes, okay, the quality of them was very poor. So if you read the paper and what the BBC and everybody will be shocked with going, hold on a minute, there's 38 different interventions available, of which only 5 have some evidence of effect, and of them 5, actually all 5 of them are poor quality trials. Yes, they are. Job done, world expert. Okay. So it's fine.
Does that mean that the other 33, if they were poor quality trials, they could have had a positive effect, but the trial didn't show?
Say that again.
Of the 33, if the trials were poor quality, that does not necessarily mean that the add-on was poor quality.
Yes, so if you use systems of quality appraising them, generally poor quality trials accentuate the effect estimate, not the other way around.
Yeah.
They don't accentuate harms. So they just you know. Yeah. But generally, if you go along is in this type of research, the most of the biases lead to positive outcome biases. So, for instance, if you don't use blinding, so people know what they get and they know what they're analysing, you tend to get more favourable results. Okay? So it's a helpful question, but generally it's the other way around. Okay? What the 33 interventions should be done is done in research, in the context of research. So I think it's fine if we go into a clinic and we say, we have these interventions, actually we're unsure about them, would you like to participate in a randomised controlled trial? Well, you get them for free then. And generally you've got a 50% chance of it being correct, depending on which arm you know. And so that's how it should happen, and that's where they're going to. What has happened as a consequence of this research is the HFEA, who are the Human Fertility Embryo Authority, now on their website, it's quite an interesting website if you go and look at it, they use a traffic light system, which is simplicity, and it's quite a nice step forward. Red, there is no evidence whatsoever this is beneficial. Amber is, there's some evidence, but it's uncertain. And green, there is evidence from at least 2 randomised controlled trials, so you can do a systematic review, that it makes a difference. They've only got 1 green intervention at the moment. The majority are amber and red. Okay? So, that's what makes a review systematic. Based on a clearly formulated question, find the relevant studies, appraises the quality, summarises by using explicit methods. And QFAS. So we're now going to do something a bit technical. We're going to go into the difficult bit of the talk. All right? And if you can come with me, you'll not just be a world expert, you will be seeking jobs in other universities on your systematic review skills. Okay. So this is a plot of a cauldron forest plot, right? Looks very pretty, doesn't it? Something like me would have on my wall. Some Jackson Pollock, some art. Anyway, I'm going to take you through this so you can understand it, and then I'm going to show you and see how you're going. Can you see that at the back? And that's a long way back there, isn't it? You might have to come forward at some point. Right, okay, so let's go for it. Sorry about that. Right, at the bottom, there's a step measuring the treatment effect. This side favours control, that time favours self-management. Twice as likely, 5 times, 10 times. Okay? So, in the middle is a line which says there's no effect. So this bit here, right in the middle, is the line of no effect. Okay? We'll take it slow and we're going to go through it. Right? Then there's an ID for each study, so there you can see there's 1, 2, 3. There's the data, and there's something called the weight. And the weight means, you see, like the bigger the study, the one at the top 83 versus 34, gives more weight to the analysis, to the summary. Yeah? The bigger the study, the more weight. Then you've got this label above the graph, tells you what statistic has been used. In this case, it's called an odds ratio. A ratio means it's a divide. It's twice as likely, 3 times as likely. That's a ratio. Okay? And then, there's the new numbers of the data. And then you have what's called this diamond effect, which is the widest bit in the middle is the estimate, okay? The point estimate, the summary of all them evidence into one, okay? And that's what we use, and it's given numerically. Now, here's the bit. If that diamond crosses the line of no effect, then that's equivalent to saying it's not statistically significant. So you can see this one doesn't touch the line, so it's significant. But if it was touching the line, the bit there is the estimate, and these are the confidence intervals. Okay? Now, that's the complicated way of doing it. Okay? Now, here's the really simple way, stripping everything out. Okay? You see, in our house, we train our kids very well in mathematics. You all do this. Okay? Get yourself a chalkboard, and tonight you can do forest plots in your house. Okay? So, these are the trials. How many trials are there? Okay, now, that's the summary estimate. 3, okay? Got it? 3 trials. Okay? These are the confidence intervals. You see, they're a bit wonky, that's what happens when you draw it in 7. But that's the confidence interval, yep? Now look, if the confidence interval touches the line of no effect, then it's not significant. Happy with that? It comes away, it's significant. Okay? How many is significant in this graph? 2. And 1 not. Good. Now, there's the line of no effect, that's it, yeah? And there's the overall summary diamond effect. That's the 4 things you need to know.
Does that include the middle one?
Yeah, so that's summarising. So what it's doing, and we're going to get there, it's summarising all 3 of these into one summary estimate. Yeah?
So is that like a mean?
Yeah, it's like the average effect, the pooled effect we call that. There's a little bit of, it's not just like we add them all up and we end up with an average effect. There's a little bit of math going on, taking account of what's called the weight. Okay? So the bigger the trials, they provide more information. Okay? Alright? Now, let's have a starter for 10. Okay? Now this is the Cochrane logo. Alright? Now, this Cochrane logo is based on trials of corticosteroid use in preterm labour. Okay? So, question number 1. How many trials are there? Well done. Somebody said 7, everybody? 7. All right. How many trials are significant? 2. Yeah. So you're looking at the top one and that one. Okay. Which is the trial with the most precise estimate? Top one. Did we go for the top one? Or you could have gone for that one, couldn't you? So the ones with the narrow confidence intervals have a more precise estimate. Some of them are wider. Yeah? Happy with it? Is the overall effect positive or negative? Somebody's shaking their head there.
not effective.
You haven't told us which side.
Go on. What?
You haven't told us which side.
You don't know, do you? Because we haven't given you the label. No, come on. That's the one that always gets you. Okay? So remember that one. Okay. Yeah, it is, but it makes you think, doesn't it? Because you can flip the way around. But interestingly, so there are 7 trials, but interestingly, what happened in preterm use of corticosteroids? This is one of the first big uses of systematic review. Because if you came along and said, well, we are going to base our information on that trial, we're going to use it. And that's what happens. Some people adopt it. But if you base it on this trial, or this trial, you're going to go, actually, we're not using corticosteroids. Now, when you do trials, you get random effects. You just don't get, because the populations might differ slightly, you might have selected people, but these are 7 randomized controlled trials, and the average effect shows a reduction in respiratory distress in neonates, in women given steroids preterm. Okay, and that now is standard practice because of this systematic review. Okay?
But you haven't given any error bars on that summary diagram. Is that normal practice?
No, that's the error. The error bar is the point estimate is that, and the confidence interval is the edges. Got that?
So if that diamond touched the line, then you'd ignore it, even though the central estimate is possible.
Oh, well, you might go, actually, what we do need at this point is a larger trial to increase the precision. And that happens quite a lot, actually. And actually, systematic review, so if you go to the major funders, kind of like the National Institute of Health Research, they will ask for a systematic review before you go and get the trial funded. They'll say, based on what evidence is it worth us continuing? You might say there are 4 trials, they're all small, and actually it looks like there's an effect, but it's not significant. We want to understand whether it's not. Is that okay?
So there's no information in that diagram about the size of the trials?
No, but...
So each of those could be 2 people?
Correct. There could be, but they're not. But you do know... Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you some real world. But just remember, what I've done, the reason I've done this is, I'm going to show you some real world data in a minute of what we're doing right now, is when we see, if I go back to the original graph and show you with all the numbers, we all completely get confused very quickly, actually. And actually, if you pare it back and go visually, let's look at what's going on, then you can start to look at the numbers and go, okay, I get it. I expect this is a larger trial. When I look at the numbers, it's that so. And that's the way you should do it. But whereas we do it the other way around, we go to a point where most people go, I've no idea, I'll just trust the Daily Express. Okay? And so let's have a look. So, here's a real world example. We got asked about 2 years ago to help out on a case for a drug called Primidos, oral hormone pregnancy test. And this is a systematic review that's freely available. You can go and look at it. But what's interesting about this treatment is it was used in the 50s and 60s and right up to about 1975. Involved injecting women, up to that point, they used to have this test, the TOAD test. Amazing what we did in the past. You used to inject this with the urine, then they'd send it away and get the HCG, and it took 2 weeks. Yeah. They brought out a test called Primidos, which contains estrogen and progesterone, and it was 40 times stronger than a contraceptive pill, and you took it on 2 consecutive days, and if you had a bleed, you were thought to be not pregnant, and if you didn't have a bleed, you were pregnant. And ever since that time, there has been concerns because it's been withdrawn from the market that it caused congenital malformations. And at the moment, it's subject of a government review, or the Baroness Cumberledge is running a review, because for 30 years there's been concerns about whether it's caused malformations or not. And that's why we did that. So when we came in, what bit do you think was missing? The world experts come along and I go, why has nobody done a systematic review? Why has it not been done? And this is from 30 years ago. So often that's the first question I ask. Okay? So remember, what makes a review systematic? The question is clearly formulated question. in women, pregnant women taking hormone pregnancy tests, does Primidos compared to not taking Primidos cause congenital malformation? Okay. Find the relevant studies, appraise the quality, use explicit methods. Okay? So, here's a systematic review. We're going to go through it again now, and when you go and look at this stuff, you should be able to go through it. But remember what we said. Okay? Think visually. The trials, the confidence intervals, the line of no effect, and the overall effect. Okay? So, here's the figure 2 in the paper. So, at the back there, you need a telescope now to see this. But this is one of the first trials, say Greenberg in 1977. Okay? Now, you was on about the data and the numbers. This side is hormone pregnancy test, increased congenital malformations. This side is decreased. Okay? So you can see one trial increases. Yeah? You asked about the numbers. So that's 836 in each group, so quite a large trial, and it doubles your risk. Okay. But what happened is, in the absence of systematic reviews, look what happens to the next trial, the next one in the sort of published. Yeah? So in the absence of systematic review methods, what do you think happens? Everybody starts to have a conversation. I know Greenberg found some positive things, but we didn't. Therefore, there isn't an effect. And it goes back and forward like a tennis match, arguing opinions all the time. And this is another even larger thing. Well, actually, there's no significant effect, although there's a slight increase in the summary estimate. Now, even if you take these two studies and put them together, in fact, the summary estimate of them two studies, it looks like it's touching the line, but that's 1.01, so it's just this way. Okay? So, two studies, summary estimate. Well, actually, there are more studies in this list. So there's a further 7 studies. So you add the case control and the co-op studies, you get 9 studies, and you get down here, and you have an overall summary estimate of a 40% increase in all congenital malformations if you took the hormone pregnancy test. Now, you could be a bit like, oh, well actually, all malformations, what does that mean? What we do then is try and be more specific about some of the outcomes. So for instance, when we looked at heart disease, congenital heart disease malformations, in fact, we saw an 89% increased risk. But you can see, actually, there's only one significant study of this. And that's because indeed, some of them are very small studies. So, this is the label in 1978, which basically all along we looked at shows, here it says, warning, a possibility exists of an association between the use of Primidos during pregnancy. A possibility. Whereas when we put our results together, this is what we show, that actually, apart from one, GI malformations, there are 5 outcomes where it significantly increases on our pooled systematic review. And therefore we say is associated and remove the possible from that statement. And that is now under review, and that's where we are. So, when you ask a question, the fundamental principle is, the next time you go and look for some evidence, if you're in Google, just add the word systematic review. And that will be the simplest way for them to come up. So for instance, that's how I search. When I'm interested in intervention, the first thing I do is look for the highest level of evidence for systematic review. Once you've found it, you have a few simple tools that can say, what does the effect mean? What does this outcome mean? How many studies is it? Is it big studies or small studies? They're really interesting, important questions, because if it's in only 2 people, you might be a bit more uncertain. If it's in a few thousand, you might say, actually I'm more likely to trust this effect. Now, there are times when systematic reviews can't help, okay? I have to be clear about this. There are some things you're just not going to look up. This one I particularly like. And of all the ones is, I'm still trying to work this one out. However, even though I am an evidence-based medicine nerd, there are some things, I have problems, I have health problems. I have slight difficulty with sleeping at the moment, and I keep going back to the Daily Express to inform what I might do. And you can see, for those of you who like to sleep, just remember too much sleep could kill you. Thank you very much. We've got a bit of time. Anyone else has a question?
Can you recommend? Thank you very much for a very entertaining and insightful lecture, Professor. Can you recommend any? What would you recommend for the best sites? And you mentioned Google Scholar. I assume you said Google.
Well, I think it's a good question, and it's a very interesting issue because searching for evidence and information is actually a really important skill, isn't it? And we all go around all day using evidence, and some of it is pushed to us, like the news. It comes at you. This is what you're going to get. The next question we call pull to us. So you have a push-pull. And pull is, can you pull information to you when you have a question that's important to you? So for instance, you might have been to your doctor, so he recommends you've got blood pressure, and he goes, I think you should go on antihypertensive. Actually, the number one, I think, resource, interestingly, is the Cochrane Library. Now, we as taxpayers pay to make it freely available to everybody in the country. So that's one thing, it's open source, so when you hit it, you'll get it there. And number two is it has a lay summary as well, which might help you orientate you. But it also has a summary table of what's called a summary findings table, which makes it really simple to say, it summarises in one table how many studies there are, the quality of the studies, and the overall effect. And it's quite a nice, simple way when you're going, okay, right now, I just want to be able to understand this in the next 5 to 10 minutes. The one thing I would try is, but there's no magic bullet, because what I would do is, if you want to have a bit of fun, is the next time you get a health headline, or you have an intervention or something, just try searching for some evidence. It's quite an interesting thing to do, and trying to see what comes up, what's pushed to the top in Google compared to what they say, compared to what you might see in the Cochrane Library. And if you do it a few times, you'll probably get a feel for going, oh, actually, this is quite straightforward, and know where to go with this type of question. And I think it's quite empowering. The thing that's quite interesting, where I started to talk about a nightmare at a party, but I'm not a nightmare when it comes to policy. So when it comes to government policy, and when I'm brought in, if they go, I don't go, so what do you think? I go, well, I know what I think, but actually here's what the evidence says. And what I do is spend a lot of time trying to do what we've just done now, trying to say, here's the evidence, here's how you might understand it, and on the basis of that, here's how then you might consider it in making a decision. So I don't go in and say, here you go, basically, in this person, all cause death. I go, look, here's the evidence, here's the number of studies, here's the effect, here's what it's based on, and then let you come to your own mind about what the issues are. And that's where evidence is very powerful.
So don't you lean towards a recommendation as well, then? Or do you try to stay as neutral?
I try to stay out of that.
And you just present the data?
Yeah, only when the evidence is overwhelming do you want to say, actually, at this point I'm going to intervene. Because if you go, actually many treatments are, that's where you want to have a balance of benefits and harms, don't you? You might present two people with the same bit of evidence, and they may come to opposite conclusions about taking the treatment or not. And that's okay. What's not okay is being on treatments where you go, I'm not really understanding why I'm on this. And when we do that, the evidence shows, and this has been done in systematic reviews, is people are less likely to take their treatment as prescribed because they have no idea why they're on it. And about 50% of all people do not take their treatments as prescribed. Interesting, isn't it? And we spend millions on treatments.
Can you say a bit more about appraising the quality of the studies?
Yeah.
How?
Well, okay. So you've got some evidence, you've done your systematic review, and in there, the first thing is to say, in a treatment effect, a systematic review of randomized controlled trials for treatment benefit, the first thing is to say randomization is really important. Yeah. And in randomising, that's your first thing. So you want to ensure what's called allocation concealment. That means when somebody randomises one person to this, they're not cheating. Okay? So if they're using a computer, that's better than them not using a computer and using a list. Because what's happened in the past is, for instance, people have gone, oh, you look pretty healthy. Do you mind if you go an intervention group? Yeah? And that's happened. And in fact, a lack of allocation concealment, if you don't have it, overestimates the treatment effect by 40%. Okay? The second one is blinding is a big issue. Okay? And that's why you have placebo-controlled trials. So you have a matching placebo, so you don't know which drug you're on, and the investigator doesn't know which drug you're on. And I participate in trial analysis, and only at the very end, when we know the effect, do we unblind the trial. Okay? And then the third thing that's really important is follow-up. That 100% of the people were followed up. Because what you often see is losses to follow-up. Okay? Well, so for instance, say I started a trial of 1,000 people in ECARM, and 2 years later there are only 800 people followed up. Somehow, mystically, 200 people have gone missing. And that happens quite a lot. Now, there are sometimes legitimate reasons for losses to follow-up. People leave, move. But sometimes in the past, people have lost the follow-up because they had the event outcome of interest. Okay? So there are three: allocation concealment, blinding, and losses to follow-up. In terms of outcomes, objective outcomes are better than subjective outcomes. Death is objective. How I'm feeling today is subjective. Okay? Now, it is important sometimes to have subjective outcomes, but actually you always want to quantify them with objective outcomes. Now, just to say, again, another thing that fascinates me and we're really interested in is bias. And if you go on the website, you can type in catalogue of bias, and me and about 20 other people have got up to about 55 biases so far, and we've got about another 55 to go. So there are about 110 biases that affect clinical research. And some of them are really important, but we don't think about them all the time. So for instance, if you go on there, there's industry sponsorship bias. And there's an article about it, and it's a really interesting phenomenon that just makes sense. If I'm about to make $4 billion out of a drug, irrespective of how good I try and do the trial, there's going to be some influence on the outcome. Even if you're not even trying to do it. Subliminally, you're going to affect the outcome, and that's shown. So have a look at the catalogue of bias, that might help you.
Is there a problem with some trials not being published because they don't actually, I've been
no, we really get into the
I'm worried about that.
Yeah. So
that the findings aren't what the sponsors or whoever hoped for.
So there's an initiative called All Trials, which I'm part of, and about 50% of all trials are never published in full. So of the 40,000 randomised trials that are done each year, and they're supposed to be, and it's interesting, if you look at the law says within 1 year of completion, you're supposed to publish your results on a clinical trial register. And clinical trial registers are really important, is because when you start a randomised trial, you put it on a register, and one of them is in America called trials.gov, and there's one the WHO. And that lets us know that you are actually doing your trial. But then you're supposed to put the results. And in fact, in America, if you don't do it within 1 year, you're supposed to be fined in law $10,000 a day for every day that you don't do it. But nobody's actually ever been fined.
Published by whom? Has to be a peer-reviewed journal.
No. It can be, if you putting results on a registry would actually be fine for us. It'd be actually better than a peer-reviewed journal, because actually it's easier to find the results because they're linked to the trial number.
More accessible.
Yeah, and actually there's a chap in our department who you might know him called Ben Goldacre. He works in the centre now, and they run something called the Trials Tracker. I don't think you've come across that. Can I get online here? Let's see. Let's see how. So here's the EU trials tracker now. There you go. Because it's now lower in EU, so right now, as of today, this breaks the data, 61% of due trials are due to report, so somehow there's a lot of data missing, isn't there? And it's interesting, what you can do is you can look by sponsor there. So actually what you find is, some of the companies are doing better than the academic institutions. Okay? Yeah.
What does Boris think?
I wonder
What's
what.
going to happen?
I wonder
What's
what.
going to happen to this and UK participation in this
Well,
on December?
well, let's see if we can. I'll come at that in a sec.
Provide.
Oh, there we go. Well, not bad, but there's 20% of the trials in Oxford are not being
And what's the
reported.
timeline?
Well, this is updated on a weekly basis. So it scrapes the data off the registry, so it's updated every week. No, so they are. These 20% have completed and are now 1 year. So by law, because it's European law now,
Breaking the law.
they're breaking the law.
So the question is, in most cases, like for example, it's 20% here in Oxford, why would they go through the trouble, get funding, and not publish within a year?
So that's an interesting question.
In most cases.
In 20% of cases, that's what's happening. So, for instance, they do a trial, they get to the end of the trial, and the results are not significant. And the investigator goes, oh, it's not
We
that
need to know
important.
that it's not. We need to know.
Yeah, but what we've shown in systematic reviews, it drives us mad. But we say this is really important data, please. We want it.
It begs the question, though.
Yeah, we think it's outrageous. Why, you should write to your MP about this and go, look, forget all this Brexit nonsense. This is the stuff that matters. But nobody's even interested. So we think this is really matters. When we show you people like this, we go, it does matter. But actually the outrage is zero, apart from a few people in our centre who really do push this like that and keep going, this is outrageous.
But Brexit's going to affect all that.
Well, can't go anywhere without this question, can you? I don't think so. I think whatever happens will be part of EU or European law, will be aligned with it in some way. And so it's simple. You just say we are aligned with. And in fact, that's not a difficult thing to do. The Swiss do it already. Swiss are not hard. They just have a piece of paper that says we will run our medicines agents completely in line with the European Union, and we can reinterpret things. So, for instance, when it comes to medical devices, which is a desperate EU law, it says you don't need any clinical trials to have a medical device on the market. You could reinterpret that and say, well, we will have clinical trials. So you could say, actually in English law, we're going to look at this and say, for instance, if you do not publish, you cannot start another study until you publish in full. Why would anybody allow people to go and say, even the University of Oxford, go and do another study? They should say, actually, if you want ethical approval for your next study, you need to fix this. It's simple. So there are simple things we can do. But actually, there's a lot of lobbying to stop these simple things because of the big business aspect. However, in this situation, as I showed you at the beginning, is industry sees this as a bit of a carrot, an easy fix for them. Now actually, in some ways, industry is doing better. So there are two ways. You can either go around with a big stick, can't we? Or we can go around and say, look, actually, you can fix this, and it could be a marker of quality. And I think that's an interesting issue because in the future, I think we are starting to understand that actually there's been a lot of crap going on, and actually we do want high quality, because if you actually fix many of these problems, when you have a treatment that actually shows benefit, you're more likely to trust it then, aren't you? So they go, you publish all your trials in full. And so they're getting that aspect. Whereas if we don't trust them, treatments come along and we go, we're going to wait a bit. So there is a real quality issue going on. And I think this stuff is hugely important because we should be leading the world. Right. And what happens though, sometimes, is you might come back next week and this figure will change. And we do find sometimes it goes up to 100%, but then it drops off. Something happens where people do sometimes go and have an audit, we make it happen for a few weeks, and then they switch it off. But I think the ethical one could fix it really easy. If you say your institution is not allowed to do any new trials unless this equals 100%.
So if you're looking for a systematic review, how likely are you to find them doctor and library? I mean, have they got 100% of everything, or should you be looking elsewhere, and what do you do whether it is found?
Come across PubMed? Anybody know about PubMed? Come across this? Al Gore, remember that? He reinvented himself as the environment. When he was the vice president, produced what's called PubMed. This is a publicly facing medline, so that you can all search on this. And there's a really neat bit which I use called here, clinical queries. Okay? And if you click on that, okay, it actually is going to produce a filter for systematic reviews. Anybody have an intervention they're interested in? Simvastatin. In any condition? Do you want? Okay. Okay. There's a systematic review, all well found. Okay. And what it's doing is it's adding in a little filter that actually filters out. If I'd have just put that in, so that's all the randomised controlled trials. Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I can change it and make it. So what that's saying is the randomised, because it's got this term broad. Yeah, it means it definitely the randomised controlled trials are in here. If I click on narrow, it narrows it a bit because it's now saying I'm going to try and make it easier. I might miss at the odd randomised trial, but these definitely are going to be in here. So that's an easier. Well, actually, there's the 11 systematic reviews on your topic. And so I have a bookmark of clinical queries at the top of my search engine. As soon as somebody asks me a question like, you've just gone, oh, I'm interested in all systematic reviews. And then they go, oh, you're a world expert. Yeah, that's it. So that's a really neat way of, and I think what's interesting is the reason I do it with the bookmark, because I don't know if you know, it's a bit like, you know, anybody go to the gym here? Yeah. You know, as you get older, when you have that day, you go, I'm going to go to the gym. And then suddenly you step outside and there's a raindrop and you go, I'm going back down. Yeah, tomorrow. And that's what happens. As you get older, something gets in our way. And it's the same with searching. If you have too many steps involved, by about step 3, so you've got to be really efficient when you're a searcher and think, how do I structure everything so it's one click away? Yeah. So by having that clinical queries bookmarked, I can go right to it at my search browser and get it in that way. And the reason being is, if I went back and did the same search in here, yeah, without the now look what's happening. I've got 1120 and I'm like too many. And now I'm just overwhelmed and I'm lost out. So you can see that way of thinking of your structural searching, yeah, is a nice way.
So your bookmark would just be PubMed clinical queries?
Yeah, as soon as I get to that clinical queries, I'll click in it and put it on the top and pull it down.
Could you say something about tests or investigations where it becomes clear that it's whatever's being investigated is not effective, but then should you then, I mean obviously you need to publish that, but should you do all the expense of the follow-up, etc., to close that down definitively, or should you spend your money on something else? Because there must be lots of false warnings.
Yeah, no, that's true. So what?
But then the quality, if you do the follow-up, then your negative information is less valuable, isn't it?
Yeah, correct. So sometimes you have to prove things don't work for us to stop and stop doing things. I agree with that. Are you all after the statistics lecture now, are you after that? No, look, here's, I'm going to finish. What we need is a revolution in the public understanding of evidence-based medicine.
you're the early adopters, because we need a complete revolution in how we understand healthcare information. One of the things we'd like to do is teach it in school. And we're trying to do that because we need to know this stuff.
There's that nice bit of the NHS website, NHS